There's a YouTube show full of fun facts you need to know. Carl rings the bell and the members show to the GMP morning show. Featured guests will come and they will blow your mind. The audience will do so in kind. The little vanity mixed with some insanity on the morning show with GMP.
Good morning, Portugal, and I'd like to welcome you to another fantastic day.
Hey, Gumpers.
Oh, just spotted a typo in the ticker tape. So maybe we should make that a competition. Anyway, all about the Alegria. Munson here with Good Morning Portugal show, live stream and podcast. Let me take care of that. It's like the UK Guardian watching my typing and attention to detail, not on the ticker tape there. I don't know if you saw that. It is Ask Anything, not anything about Portugal Wednesday, of course. And a special show for you. Oh, hold on a minute, we've had an upgrade suddenly. I refer to him as the doc normally. Suddenly he's the prof. So maybe there's something that's happened that we don't know about that we'll be able to congratulate him about when he joins us at 9 this morning. So let me put that ticker tape back on. We are attempting to solve the Portugal property problem in our own unique and small way in the scheme of things, but I think you'll find our guests very interesting this morning with their particular views on the situation, which nobody disagrees on, that there is a problem with Portuguese housing for the local people, for the indigenous Portuguese, the pressure put upon them and that market by incoming immigrants, foreigners, expats, whatever you want to call them, and the amount of inventory available for those expats, foreigners, immigrants who want to come in. I think for every house sold, what is it? There are 9 needed, or some kind of. I got to be careful. I can't just say something like that. I think I read somewhere. I will sharpen my act up on reporting this, but I think you'll find it very interesting. The political punditry of the doc, maybe the prof as he is now, and Bobby O'Reilly, who joins us at 9:30. So it'll be nice to see the doc again. We'll catch up with the doc at 9, who seems to have moved home as well. He's in a very nice looking home, or certainly has a very nice new green screen backdrop. And we look forward to speaking to him soon after we've had a bit of a Gumper gathering and seeing how everybody is this morning. Tabitha's here. Thank you for being on the Portugal Business Club last night, Tabitha. That was a lot of fun last night, wasn't it? Patio Furniture is here as well. What? Pete's in, taking the Mickey out of my hair this morning, and I use that in the plural, only just, but still I do. Tabitha, yeah, I read there are 750,000 empty homes in beautiful Portugal. We have to be careful, don't we, with these sort of stats? But certainly, if you drive around Portugal, you would certainly get that feeling anecdotally. There are a lot of empty homes in Portugal, no question about that. The number I'm not exactly sure about. If anyone has a source for that, look at me in my old age asking for sources. We shall see whether they are forthcoming or if we can just grab at statistics to prove our point whenever we want to. Just what most of us do most of the time, right? With our confirmation biases and echo chambers and all that sort of stuff. Well, let's have as wide and broader conversation with as many points of view as we can muster this morning, as long as they are respectful and legal. Let's chuck them all in there. Deagle's in this morning, as is Thunderduck, T-Duck. Sorry to hear that you'll not be joining us at the meetup on the Silver Coast this lunchtime. And we'll see you soon. And lots of love to Mrs. Duck. Coach Turner's in. James is back. Did you miss me? Yes, we did. This morning. And you had a lovely day in Cascais with Jean and Antonio and his delightful family. Well, how wonderful. Excellent stuff. Yeah, Coach Turner's in. We've got a few memes for you, Coach Turner. Pete's in as well. This is what he's saying about my barnet. I'm not saying Carl is losing his hair. Maybe the doc can help with this. He's got a nice full head of hair from what I can see here. I'm not. So what's his secret, I wonder? I imagine it's some of Leona's balms rubbed on in a loving way on his bonts over there, the doctor's bonts. I'm not saying Carl's losing his hair, but lice are starting to pick it about deforestation. 2 slurs in one comment there. I've got head lice and I'm losing my barnet. And a dad joke warning. I didn't do the warning. What do conspiracy theorists and Excel have in common? they spreadsheet. Interesting. You also might say about that, Pete, they are both disliked, aren't they? Excel and conspiracy theorists, but they do get good results in the end. Okay. Teamwork makes the dream work there, Pete. Who else is in this one? Yeah, Capricorn 12. Marcus is in 2. Your PT Country Bear. Yeah, Tabitha. How are you doing, Tabitha? Great to see you here. The Portugal Sun as well. Can't wait to join in on the business club. A little late here, but catch up the next day. Yes, good fun. It's a light-hearted look, and it's about new ways of looking at business, not traditional ways necessarily, because we are not living in the world we once lived in, are we? The one we're educating all our kids for, and the ones that we're doing MBAs for. The world seems to be changing rapidly, a little bit faster than the curriculums, you might say. So we take a little bit of a maverick view at business, and especially business in Portugal. A terrible place to run a business, in my personal opinion. I love being independent and running my own business, but it is horrible running a business in Portugal. So we'll help you with that predicament. You might not find it the same. But I do, and I'm able to vent my spleen at 9 o'clock on a Tuesday evening. But don't let that put you off. Bon dia from Bairandi Market Day today. Very nice. What's on the shopping list today? Do you like I do, when you go into Lidl or Aldi or somewhere, any of the supermarkets, and you look down into the basket and there's somebody's old shopping list in there? I always have a little neb at those and see what people are buying. Packet of cigs, cooked chicken, whatever, condoms, whatever's on there. And I like people's handwriting as well, especially when it's old-fashioned scripty handwriting, maybe from an elderly Portuguese person. Do love to see other people's shopping lists. What are you after today, by Andy? Probably exactly that list I just gave out, right? It is 30 plus. It's midnight for Sue's. Good morning to you, Suze. And Baddy's here again. Fantastic to see you, Baddy, from sunny Saya. Now, did I see that Saya cheese was up for some sort of award? It probably is, isn't it? Saya cheese. You'll see it. You'll see a Saya in a supermarket, going back to supermarkets and shopping lists. Saya cheese. Very nice indeed. Over where Baddy lives. That's where it's made. And Tabitha, thank you very much for this. Inventoried by the European Federation. I asked for a source, and look at this. There you go, Carl. Take that. European Federation of National Organizations working with homeless people, the FEANSA, confirmed by data from the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the OECD, and endorsed by researchers and housing activists. 750,000 empty properties then. Well, I didn't mean to doubt you. I just thought it would be great to have a source there for that. And you've provided it, Tabitha. Thank you very much. How's your husband this morning? He was a bit confused last night, I think. And Pete, sounds lovely. Hope you have a good bifana and coffee and some lovely wonky veg. Who doesn't like a bit of wonky veg first thing in the morning? Thank you, Pete. And Sarah Yeoman's here as well. Bon dia. All tuning in then for this Portugal property problem and seeing what we can do to add our input to this. Of course, it's not finalized, but if I give you a little bit of a timeline and then we'll return to talk about it at 9 o'clock before looking at other things. RIP, the father of Portuguese surfing, a tribute to him this morning. We're in the Portugal Living magazine. My goodness, what a bumper edition that is. And I've got an apology to make about getting your tolls paid on the gantry tolls. Mainly the gantry tolls. And I gave out a little bit of incorrect, partly correct, which means it was partly incorrect as well, information about that. Where was I going before that? Oh, yes, the timeline of the mais habitação situation, and the PM, flanked by his colleagues, presented the proposed policies of mais habitação, and I'll put them on the screen here, and we'll come back to this later, of course, because we'll be talking about it with the doc and with Bobby. But there they are the other day, and they did a PowerPoint presentation. I mean, that was asking for trouble, wasn't it? I mean, doesn't everybody's heart sink when a PowerPoint presentation comes on with the usual, oh, bear with me just a moment. Can you see it? I can see presenter view. I can't see the there we go. Okay, there we go. And there's a first helicopter transition of the first point of 300 points to be made on a PowerPoint. You see, that's where they went wrong. It's also been described by the president as a melon. He's kind of defended his prime ministerial colleague. I don't know if that's how he strictly speaking, constitutionally, he would be referred to. But the president did hold back and said, you don't know, with a melon, you don't know what's inside. Let's wait and see with this. But as you can see, it's been criticized for not having wings to fly. And it is nearly 20 points. So there's a lot for people to get their heads around and possibly their wallets around. And it looks like it could be pushed through fairly quickly. There's a lot of political will for it because we have a coalition government here. And I imagine quite smartly, and the doc, or the prof, as he might be called now, will have something to say about this. The coalition, there's a bit of coalition courtship going on where the PM, to get his way, will be giving little prezzies and gestures towards colleagues who can help retain and boost power rather than lose it. So I think there's some of that going on as well. Of course, the great political football that is the golden visa was summarily dispatched as well on proposal so far. And let's see what happens, how far they can take it. What with all the controversy that's been caused. So looking forward to talking about that at 9. So back to other news this morning. Let's do a quick tribute to the father of Portuguese surfing. This is an ugununu in its own right, and we'll come back to the Who Knew Portuguese saying of the day and all the wonderful content that's coming from Thunderduck this morning. Taking a quick look now, though, at the father of Portuguese surfing, who has passed away at the age of 92, proving that surfing may be a very good way to keep in good shape and live a long, happy and fulfilling life, which I suspect he did. That would be Pedro Martins de Lima, a pioneer of surfing in Portugal, was 92 years of age, and the Portuguese Surfing Federation, didn't know there was one of those, I liked it this morning, has issued through social networks a note in which it confirms the death of Pedro Martins de Lima, considered the father of surfing in Portugal, who was 92 years old. Today, we have to mourn the loss of one of the greats, they say. A pioneer of great courage and vision, Pedro is unanimously considered the first Portuguese to surf waves. Isn't that amazing? That it's actually quite a recent thing, isn't it? And he was the first, or considered to be the first. And our first surfer with a capital S. He left us at the age of 92. Isn't this beautifully put? To surf new waves, says the organization in a note on Facebook. And look at those, if you can see the screen at the moment, that fantastic image of him, which I haven't yet shared with you, but there it is now. Isn't that interesting that the advertising that goes with that on the page are some Shackleton type chairs for old people's homes that can give you a lazy boy experience and tip you out when you need to get up to go to the lavatory. Spectacle advertising, as well as, I don't know what that is. Oh, that's a tower computer. It could be a lot worse, quite frankly, given some of the things we've talked about on the show. I remember his charming personality about Pedro here and his generosity. A big aloha, Pedro. See you forever, ends the note from the Portuguese Surfing Federation, not association. Pedro Martins de Lima started surfing standing up. That's the key distinction, I suppose. A lot of people would have just paddled about before then on pieces of wood or whatever, but he was the first to do a stand-up surf in 1959. Is therefore considered the pioneer of the sport in Portugal. No comments yet over there on the Portugal news. Okay, let's see who else is here. RIP there, Pedro. Ooh, Carl, a chair that is so easy to get in and out of. How can you resist? Do I need one of those for the studio? Are you suggesting, Peter? Okay, let's go back to the beginning. And Deagle McKillen, who was here at 7:44 this morning. Bon dia, Carl and Gumpers from very cool, wet Belfast. A bit damp here, which has dampened down the Saharan sand, which is really coming great volume, I noticed. It's ruining the paintwork on my vehicle. Which is or adding more to the patina of time of my vehicle. Very cool, wet Belfast. First rain in roughly 10 days tonight. Will be very cold, back to minus temperatures. Yeah, it's a bit chilly here as well. I'm not sure how warm it's going to be for the meetup on San Martino de Porto. San Martino de Porto! That's what they were saying at the Carnival. Has everyone recovered yet? Probably not from Carnival. I saw last night a harsh, wet winter in Spain, France, some vegetables in short supply. They reckon 2 to 3 weeks empty shelves. Cucumber was 49 pence last week. This week, 165. There's supply and demand economics. Tomatoes were 115. This is back over in the UK for 8, now £2. Lettuce was 55, now 140. Are they blaming conditions elsewhere for something else that's actually going on now? I'm sounding like a conspiracy theorist, Pete. It's actually cheaper not to import them, as people won't pay the high price and they'll go off in the shops. Interesting. But then again, some people might buy them for the sheer luxury. But then again, it is salad, isn't it? I'm a big believer. Eat off your land. We have plenty of carrots, swede, cabbage, onions in season. Eat salad in spring and summer. Yeah, right. Bon dia alegria from T-Duck then, and a deep thought to kick off with from T-Duck. When you reach the end of your rope, tie a knot in it and hang on. That sounds pretty grim, but yeah, I think that does that must mean like in a cartoon, whilst the rope is slipping through your hands, metaphorically, tie a knot on the end very quickly, and that'll give you something to hold on to. Good advice from Franklin Delano Roosevelt, or FDR, American politician and lawyer who served as the 32nd President of the United States of America. And whenever I say it like that, I hear the national anthem in the back of my head. Burr, 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 burr. And I want to put my hand on my chest and say, God bless America. Now, yeah, it's interesting that, isn't it? Is it the back of your head where you hear things? Where do you hear things? Those voices, you know. Portuguese saying then, primeiro a obrigação, depois a devoção. First obligation, then devotion. Business before pleasure. Have we come here for that? I wonder. Why before or after? Could we not make business a pleasure? This is what I was saying about the business club, where business, I mean, it's not all a pleasure, obviously, you know, given what I've said about how horrible it can be running a business in Portugal. But for a lot of the time, surely we can mix up business with pleasure in this wonderful new land that we've adopted. Sorry for calling you Shirley. Ugununu then! 2022, Portugal was considered for the first time the friendliest country in the world, appearing in first place in a list of 65 countries. Let me put up the best image I can find for that. And it won't be Bastardo's fish bar. Let me see. Who can I put up? Friendliest country. Okay, here's a picture that I didn't get to show before. Here are some people dancing. I think these are Andy's kids, by Andy, dancing. Now, here's a friendly country when your kids are welcomed into the local dancing. Back to the Ugununu. Yeah, 2022 then. Only in 2022, Portugal considered for the first time the friendliest country in the world, appearing in first place in a list of 65 countries. Excellent stuff. The study analysed 13,000 surveys from 188 countries. The parameters were attitude towards immigrants, yay, the ease of making friends, and the probability of expatriates staying in the country. Portugal moved up 9 places, now in at number 1 from number 10. Yes, it would be, wouldn't it? Just doing the math there, but I'm thinking, if you move up 9 places, have you gone from 10 to 1, or have you gone from 9 to 1, strictly speaking? Mathematicians and chart experts, please help. Portugal moved up 9 places since the last study carried out in 2016. Only 2 other European countries were in the top 20. Spain, funnily enough, in 17th, and Romania in 19th position there. Very interesting. Thank you very much. We'll come back to those dad jokes there. Thank you for that lovely picture of the kids dancing back in the day there. Here are some more, I think, from the same part of the country. That looks a little bit more modern with the band there. And oh, look, that must be lovely when one of your kids is taken in, to the local community and taking part in a cultural event of that kind. So recycled dad jokes, of course they are. Is the very definition of a dad joke, is it not? But these have been recycled from the gardening show, and I am putting them by to surprise my guests with later on by way of a palate cleanser, which we might need after a little bit of political punditry and some insight about what's going on with the housing crisis and the proposals to sort it out. Bom dia, Gumpers! Feliz Cata todos, como va, from the slug, who's back. That must have taken quite a long time for a slug to get from Ericeira to Cascais. I'm glad you had a lovely time. Unfortunately, we don't put much pop in the Arazzi, or the pap in the paparazzi. Just one pic with Jean and me on her camera. She has her CEF appointment there today. So good luck to you. Those of you who know Andy, who had a little bit of trouble, Andy Klein, with the passports, that's all sorted out now, which is great news. Well done, Andy, and good luck today to you, boss. To you, Jean. Bon dia todos. I'm going to be driving during the show, so we'll catch up later. I can't miss the doc. Look at that. God Squad tip of the day. I won't apologize for yet again quoting Ben Fogle. He won't mind either, I don't suppose. His programs about people living in the wild are inspiring, partly because of the people and partly his empathy. He says, Ben Fogle, if you want nothing, you have everything. Very good indeed. And some memes for you then when you watch later on to see the doc and to find out how that's gone down. Your Ben Fogle quote. Forgot to go to the gym today. That's 3 years in a row now. Thank you for that, James. And another one that appealed to me. Is this okay, Coach Turner? It's a 5-minute walk from my house to the pub. It's a 30-minute walk from the pub to my house. The difference is staggering. No warning issued for all of these dad jokes this morning. Yeah, we've all done that, have we not? Not just because it's down the bottom of the hill either. And bon dia from Casa de Lomba from Marcus this morning. Loving those dad jokes. Thank you very much, T-Duck, for those and everything else that you've given us this morning. Yeah, and sorry not to be seeing you at the meetup this morning. Sadly, you won't be there. Mrs. Duck isn't feeling well. I suspect it's from all the Saharan dust in the air. The doc, I'm sure, will be able to tell us what the impact is of Saharan dust. We went for a long walk yesterday. Not great for anyone with respiratory difficulties or asthma. Let me see. My uncle is an expat. He changed his name years ago. Very good. Okay. And the Portugal sun is here. Bom dia, a todos. And Tabitha, Chris, thank you all for being here. Chris, how are you this morning? Lovely fella. And me and Peter asking you. So let us know in the chat if you will. Thank you very much for your source as well this morning on every level, Tabitha. Carl, yes, those chairs. And by Randy, not sure what he's going to get in the market. Going to see what the stands have. That's the way to go to the market, isn't it? Buy what's there. There's a very antithesis of buying what you want out of season at any blooming time during the year at a supermarket with all those air miles. Buy what's available. Maybe some more strawberries to perk up the patch. Who doesn't like to perk up their patch first thing in the morning? Plus some veg. Excellent stuff. Hey, why not make, yes, on the same wavelength here this morning, James. Why not make business a pleasure? Many have made a bundle out of making pleasure a business. Coming in thick and fast this morning. That's probably quite the right choice of words there. Portugal #1 in friendliness. Yay, Wilfredo. Good morning to you. And that was Bayrandi's daughter in the yellow. My son playing the guitar. Lovely memory there for Bayrandi. That is awesome. They look really good. What I love is how all ages are involved in Carnival and everyone makes such a great effort. Congrats to both of them. And I think it was a while ago there, Pete. Let's have a look now before we welcome our guest this morning at Portugal Living magazine. Now, have I got this? How can I see this? I don't think it's oh, yeah, here is our spring issue. It's okay, everybody. Relax. I didn't mean to cause any alarm there. I just didn't think I could get Portugal Living magazine onto the screen. I'm just going to take a sip of water and drink the rest of my tea, which is now cold. Chat among yourselves for a moment. Yuck, cold tea. Okay, maybe there's a device I can buy in a Chinese shop to keep my tea warm during the show. Okay, so there's Portugal Living magazine. Here is our spring issue, proudly presented to you by Bruce Joffe, of course, one of our correspondents. And we'll talk more about Portugal Living magazine, the award-winning Portugal Living magazine, mind you. Look, I'm going to read through what's on the cover here. Sopa de Feijões, importing a car, have a nice life, closing the deal, Brits in Portugal. I'll drink to that. These are all articles in the new Portugal Living magazine, the spring edition. I'll drink to that. Battling brambles, cruising the Douro, learning the lingo, storytelling Lisbon, Penella River Lodge, how power hungry in Portugal in PT, Portuguese pastries, Portuguese poussadas, little Portugal in India. Is Lisbon still cheap? Cheap being in inverted commas there. Making friends abroad, Quinta Rosa de Victoria, Algarve's safe transport, paying 95 euros to save 37,000 euros. Should I move to Portugal? That's me. That is page 28. A little bit of a vignette. The serialization of which I'm a little bit embarrassed because I started that in good faith at the end of last year and ran out of steam. Sorry, little cough there. So a nice prompt to be in the next edition with the next episode of that. Should I move to Portugal? Well, thanks, Bruce, for featuring me there. Should I move to Portugal? Footpath through Portugal. Phallic ceramic. That's a good headline. That's a attention-grabbing headline. And we know what that's about, don't we? The epicenter of phallic ceramics. Caldas de Rainha, I would say, wins that prize. Cockery pottery. Phallic ceramics. 50 things to know about Portugal. That's just your starter. Adopting a Portuguese way of life and how moving to Portugal changed us. All of that, plus news and information, friends and neighbors, rant and caption contest, concerts and performances, safety and security checklist, and power up your Portuguese. I'll just scroll through it very quickly here because I do like to look at the pictures. It's how I do most of my reading. Look at this, loads of great stuff in here. Lovely picture of Bruce there, welcoming everybody to the new edition there, the spring issue. Super dupes. Packed, absolutely bumper crop. Packed with great information about Portugal. Isn't this superb? Hold on, I want to. Property in there. What have we got here then? Look at that. You still buy a 3-bedroom house with annexes and backyard in central Portugal for €87,000. How about that? Ask Fernando. That reminds me of ABBA does that. Azores Properties relocate to Pico of Faial. Isn't that great? Ooh, rant. Golden visa residency problems. Yeah, well, that's going to be a thing of the past. Some lovely ads for some wonderful businesses here. Oh, and the presidential trains journey. I think that would be Salazar's possibly, or the royal train maybe. The presidential and royal train there in a rather nice royal blue. All of this, and I think I'm only at page 14 of 96 here. Isn't that incredible? All of the great and the good, it would appear, of Portugal's expat scene are represented in some way in Portugal Living. This being the spring. And look, there's our friends Colleen and Clyde and team over there at Portugal the Place as well. This is fantastic. What a great job, Bruce. And remember, if you're looking for a business in Portugal, don't let me put you off. There's me and Mrs. M featured on page 28. Deborah De Haab, the expat whisperer. Remember, we spoke to her long, long ago. Fantastic. We could do Trumps here. Who have we spoken to? Who haven't we spoken to on the show? A lot of people we have spoken to. Our guest tomorrow, Heather. Heather Binder from Boots on the Ground. She'll be with us on the show tomorrow. This is fantastic. Thomas there, Rehabilitatio, battling brambles. The ducks still won't line up. Alistair Leithhead, he used to work for the BBC. He's got a bit inside Portugal Living as well. This is fabulous, Alistair Leithhead. I want to get him on the show as well. Sorry if you're getting motion sickness with me with me scrolling this on the screen. I want to read that footpath through Portugal. He was on our show yesterday. That's Mark Stoll of our Farm Portugal. How about that? We're so well connected, everybody here, you gumpers, honestly. We haven't spoken to Carol Wilcox yet, have we? I don't think. She might be new. But Penella River Lodge, we stay in touch with them on social media. Fabulous. This is really good. We're just about halfway through. So get your own copy. Search for Portugal Living magazine, and you'll be able to download your digital edition there. Fabulous. Shall we bring him onto the screen now? What is this? Oh, that man is a great one to have for the best man speeches. Which one is that then? Alistair Leithhead. He is just interested in the ceramic phallus. Who are these scurrilous rumors being circulated about here, Pete? Careful. I've enjoyed Portugal Living magazine digital for over a year now. Always informative and interesting. So there you go. A nice review there, not just of this issue, but the Portugal Living magazine in general. I'm going to find out now what this prof thing is all about. Let's give him a nice big round of applause. And bring him onto the screen. He looks like a member of Craftwork at the moment. Are you staring into a computer? Andy, the prof. Good morning to you.
Good morning, bom dia, alegria. Leiria.
Morning. What's all this?
But a different what I do.
Oh, this is going to be great fun. Your signal is terrible, mate.
And flat. Yeah.
What? Your connection is not brilliant. Try that again.
Yeah. Hold on.
You got a lovely house there, but
second.
a terrible Wi-Fi connection.
Yeah.
No, the connection, not the green screen.
Let's try that. Yeah. No, I think the green screen isn't helping with the mirror.
Oh, with bandwidth.
Okay. And now I can't get rid of it. So anyway.
You have got rid of it for us. So you're sounding
no,
better.
this is. Yeah, I have got rid of it. There you are. I just thought I'd see what it would be like to move into an abandoned oligarch's villa on the Algarve. But I don't like it, so I'll stop here.
Oh, you didn't like it? Okay, fair enough.
Yes, for the 20 minutes that I had the grand piano on my left shoulder, it was lovely.
A nice quality of life.
So first of all, before we...
Sorry, Andy, we've got a big delay here, clearly, haven't we? So I will stop talking now and let you talk. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, Carl. Yeah. So the prof thing. Yes, su professor. I've just started working as a TEFL teacher for a Polish platform online called Tutlo. So I'm now a professor in Portuguese.
Wow, excellent stuff. Congratulations. So that's
Thank you.
like, yeah, I not a real professor. If I don't want to take anything away from you, but you haven't made the move from professor. Okay, just to clarify there.
No, I was just having a bit of fun. I'll
Yeah,
change it
okay.
back for the next session.
You've no need to. Now, have you moved house as well since I last saw you?
No, we're still we're still where we have been since 2020. We are still waiting for the wheels that grind so slowly in Portuguese and, to be fair, UK law and finance, etc., etc. But
Okay.
it's all still on the cards for some time, hopefully this year. We'll see.
Excellent. Good luck with that, my friend. Okay, so my habitation. I think everyone would agree that something needs to be done about the situation in Portugal. We heard earlier on this morning that 750,000 properties are empty. Something needs to be done. We can agree on that. How to do it seems to be the cause of some disagreement. What do you make of it so far,
Yeah.
Prof. Doc?
Okay, I will go straight into that in a very short time. However, I just wanted to say about the vegetable shortage. I did notice an absence of government ministers on the benches in the House of Commons the other day. But there we are.
Oh my word!
That's
Okay,
a
yes,
that's
very
a bit of homage to Spitting Image, if you remember
yes.
when Margaret
I,
Thatcher was asked, they'll have the same.
yes, that's right. I do remember that. Absolutely right. Yes, it's not been the same
Okay,
ever since it's with image.
yeah,
But go on.
no, fantastic sketch. Okay, so the program that was outlined a couple of days ago by the government, fantastic. I think it's criminal to have so many empty properties that are not just in Portugal. This is all around the world. Certainly, much worse homeless problem than there is in Portugal. But so really, I'm very much in favour of the government taking over empty properties, but this should happen to municipally owned properties as well. There are allegedly a large number of municipal properties that are lying empty, council housing. A lot of this is to do with in the public sector with standards and the need for renovation, and in the private sector, need for renovation, but also the problem of heirs who are in conflict. And so I think these should be taken over by, there should be a publicly owned body to take them over, to pay a lease to the owners on a utility but not commodity value. One of the problems with housing in the Western world is that it has been commodified, and so property is bought as for capital investment rather than for the provision of housing. So the lease should be paid on a utility value. There should be a program of renovation and, if necessary, new home building. And this can be used to train and employ tradespeople on a non-profit basis. This should not be yet another avenue for public money to go into the pockets of private builders, but there should be, so it should be based to train and employ people on a non-profit basis. This will help the employment problems in Birmingham. Birmingham in Portugal. It'll provide it'll provide economic activity not just in Lisbon and Porto, but also around the rest of the country. There needs to be a transition to a low rent economy through enforced rent freezes. The proportion of income that's paid on housing has risen steadily in the last 30 or 40 years in both Portugal and the rest of, certainly the rest of Europe. And there needs to be a program of decentralization of economic activity, because the focus of economic activity having shifted to Porto, Lisbon, and the Algarve has emptied communities, as we know. And there needs to be a program of decentralization of the economy, so that there's not the draw, or there's less of a draw for young people to leave everywhere else and move to Lisbon and Porto. I think moving to the other aspects of the program, they should leave Airbnb alone. Tourism is absolutely vital. It's now heavily Airbnb is heavily regulated. Alojamento local, so it should be heavily regulated, and there ought to be regulation to stop that from driving capital prices up, property prices up. And the same with the golden visa. The golden visa attracted a lot of capital and income into Portugal. I'm not here on a golden visa, obviously, but having moved here, my pension, which would have been paid in the UK for consumption in expenditure in the UK, is now helping to support the economy, and this happens with the golden visa. So while I'm not a natural fan and supporter of the rich, I have nothing against the golden visa, and it should be maintained, but again regulated. And actually, if they if the plan that I outlined in terms of housing was adopted, then the cost of the golden visa wouldn't have to rise; it could actually be reduced.
Interesting. Okay, so how much of that is what is proposed, and how much of that is what you would add to the itinerary?
Well, obviously, the Airbnb and the golden visa stuff, I'm against what the government's proposed.
Yeah.
The taking over empty properties and the payment to owners is part of the program, so I'm very happy about that.
Yeah.
But I'm concerned that the renovation program will be done purely on the in the private sector. So a lot of the money spent on that will go into private profit, and this is not what we want in a program designed to tackle homelessness. Transition to low rents. Well, we have caps on rises in Portugal, which is welcome. But actually, I think the government should go further and should freeze rents, and
Interesting.
if not reduce them until the proportion of income that's spent on housing is back to a sustainable level in what is, after all, a low wage economy.
Yes, interesting. Your comment about the rich. Did you say you were not a fan of the rich? Can you just define that? Is that all of them, or just people who earn more than you do?
No, yeah, I mean,
What do we mean here? You're talking
listen,
about
I'm not poor, and it's not
oh,
that I have anything. It's not that I have rich people. I will clarify that by saying I'm not a fan of the accumulation of generational wealth at the expense of the ability of other people to feed,
mm,
clothe, educate, keep themselves healthy. And that is what's happened over the last however many years. the proportion of GDP that is paid in income as opposed to the proportion paid in the distribution of profit has reduced dramatically over the last 30 or 40 years. Does that mean that the working class is producing less of the wealth and magically people who sit and tell them what to do are responsible for more of that wealth? No, it just means that the latter have become more adept at stealing that wealth from the working class.
That's different, well, certainly as I'm hearing it there, and thank you for that clarification. Because a very interesting thing came up last night on the business club talking to Vitor. He said that because somebody just chipped in with a all Republicans are this comment last night, and it was just really unnecessary and unhelpful and inflammatory, really. And this happens all the time, of course, doesn't it? And could quite easily happen this morning in casual conversation, unless we dig in a bit deeper and find out what we're really trying to say. And Vitor said, that his experience, he had a very good observation about American politics, about which he knew more than Portuguese politics, strangely enough. But he said his view of Republicans and Democrats is much wanted the same things. They just had very different ways of going about them, and we tend to forget that, don't we? And I think it's it's very interesting what you just said there. What I heard first, I was like, the rich, eat the rich, that kind of sentiment, which can be inflammatory and upsetting. And then when you talked about it, when we unpacked it, what it sounded like to me is weaponized wealth. And I think most people are, if we're talking in terms of 99%, 1%, there is weaponized wealth at which most people, I think, find themselves at a disadvantage. So that elevates it rather than dividing and ruling us, you might say.
Yeah, absolutely. I have no doubt that there is a small proportion of the population who are very happy to accumulate the wealth at the expense of others. But actually, most of what happens now is systematic. It's part of it, or systemic. And this is why the system needs changing. Marx predicted all of this, 150 years ago. It's all there to read. It's difficult to read, but it's all there. It's all predicted.
Yes.
There are some comments in the chat. And Thunder Duck. Sorry.
Was he a conspiracy theorist? I guess you could say.
Thunder Ducks. Marx? No, he wasn't a conspiracy theorist. He was a very good theorist.
Yes.
Thunder Duck seems to think I should give away one of my doors and some of my chairs. Well, the doors aren't mine to give away, Lord. And they're the landlords. I think I might end up in prison if I start taking doors off of landlords and giving them away. But but in terms of the chairs, well, I have I'm disabled, so I have a chair that I sit in to work, and I have a chair that lifts me up when I having and my so I don't think. However, you sit on them as off-wish.
Yes. Well, that suddenly sounded like a Department of Work and Pensions, not a means test. It was one of those tests, wasn't it? Like, you justify your chairs there, young man. I think the point Thunderduck is continuing to make is the empty properties aren't the government to give away. Now, this has been quite chilling for people, hasn't it? The idea of property being taken by the government. And I think part of the problem with this is that we're in this problem because of the government. So if the government starts taking property, will it be in good hands? Will it be efficiently managed? Is that like a sane thing to do, apart from a good political choice?
So, Carl, it's not a question of giving the properties away. And if you talk about property management, you see many, many empty properties that are more and more dilapidated, with trees going into their windows before they start to fall down and become ruins. And it's only when they become totally uninhabitable and become an eyesore that the municipalities even think about using powers that they have to have to make or compulsory renovation orders on those properties. So I'm not suggesting taking them and giving them away. What I'm suggesting is that if properties are lying empty, and I think the government have said for a year or more, which I think is reasonable, if properties are lying empty for a year or that those properties are the control of them is taken over by the by the public sector, that they renovate and maintain them, that they rent them out, that they pay a utility value lease to the owners, and that's not taking them away. That's actually the owners will end up getting more money than they're currently getting. In terms of the heirs in conflict in Portugal, what often happens is that those properties, the heirs never agree what to do with them, and they go from being reasonably habitable properties or needing minimal renovation work to being ruins that can no longer be used, and their value tumbles from maybe 60,000 or 100,000 euros down to 25. And who's gained in that? There's been property uninhabited. The value has declined. There's been no work for the local building sector, which could have had that work to do the renovations. Nothing, no property for people to live in. No, I mean the owners would end up actually getting an income, and the ownership would not change.
Okay, got it. I see your point. My concern, as I think others might have a similar concern, is putting it into the hands of people who might not be up to the job. Because if they're up to the job, they might have done it by now. But here's an example in Sesimbra. Morning to you, Michael Whitby. There are at least 3 big property developments, 2 of them ready to move into, that could not get their occupancy permits because of a problem with the original permit applications. Now, this is another, as well as empty properties all over Portugal, you do see developments, don't you, that have stalled in some way. Now, this can't be right, can it? All the effort that's been gone to with this, that is a problem of local government, or incompetent local government by the sound of it, which is causing some strain. Now, is that who we want to give these powers to, the sort of people who are incompetent in this way? Or should we retrain them as
not
part of this
necessarily.
package?
Well, there are three things there. One is the need for training. The second is the resourcing of local government. I'm not saying that they're not resourced sufficiently to do this, but one of the problems with running down public sector is that you end up with where you did have well-trained humans, poorly trained humans, and you end up with monkeys doing the job, right? So there's a question of training, there's a question of resourcing, and actually, you see why are there empty, poorly maintained municipal properties when people are homeless? So that's something which needs to be sorted. But the third thing is, if the municipalities can't do the job, then you establish a national public sector body to take it over, like a housing corporation or whatever. But publicly owned, non-profit, able to employ and train its own workforce, and able to use these powers that I talked about.
Why would you, in this instance, have it only a public body? what wouldn't it be good to have a hybrid of people who know what they're doing? Which I guess you would concede, wouldn't you, that private sector does know what it's doing in many ways, and couldn't the combined expertise of human beings from their respective source skill bases could come together to manage this, right? It
Right.
doesn't need to be
Well,
either or, is it?
what's the motivation for the private sector?
Um, well, I know where you're going with this. Profit is on
Yeah.
the face of
Okay.
it. Right?
So
Yeah.
so why would you take let's say you've got 100,000 euros to spend,
Yeah.
and you need to pay 20,000 out in in materials, etc., and running costs. You need to pay 40,000 out in wages, and that leaves you with 40,000 left. Now, if you're in the public sector, that 40,000 can be used to expand the activities, or to go back into the treasury. In the private sector, the 40,000 is going to owners' pockets. My experience is in the health sector in the UK, which was a fantastic, as you know, fantastic public sector organization or organizations, getting worse, as we know, through a combination of underfunding and reduced funding, and actually, as a result of the creaming off of a large amount of their budget by the private operators who've been allowed to come in and have contracts with the public sector. And the King's Fund looked at this in the UK, and it's very clear that actually the most efficient, economically efficient provision was in the public sector. Even when
Yeah.
contracts were let to so-called charities to provide a service, charities, and I say so-called charities advisedly, because they seem to exist only to employ the bloated management levels that we needed to get rid of in the NHS. Um,
Yes.
so if that experience exists and it can be well remunerated on a salaried basis, why would any of those people work in the private sector?
Good question. I would like to wrap my head
Better
around that, but
and
I
be
want to.
more efficient.
Okay, all right. Interestingly, though, with the NHS, the same it leads the same way, doesn't it, in terms of people's analysis of the situation? You did leave out poor management there, didn't you? Which is the point I'm making about the public sector. But we'll come back to that. And this needn't just be a conversation between you and I, and it clearly isn't. So we'll bring in some of the chat here, and Bobby will be joining us at
Mm.
1:30 as well. A few points, few questions from what's been said already. The empty properties aren't the government's to give away. This is a kind of emotive point, isn't it? And I was put right on this last night when I began talking about it on the business show last night. It's not taking away, is it necessarily? It is commandeering, I suppose would be a word to use. I guess it's the lack of permission that people are understandably concerned about here. And yet you support Airbnb. I think this is for you, Doc, from Tabitha. You support Airbnb, where most are owned by foreigners instead of Portuguese hotels. Could you just run that past us again? Because as I understand it, the Alojamento Local licenses are just stopping. There won't be any more new ones, except in the countryside where it might be advantageous. So what was your idea on this, Doc, with Airbnb and ALs?
Yeah, so I think ALs should be heavily regulated. Actually, I would be in favour of saying that they should only be owned by Portuguese residents, not just Portuguese nationals, because actually expat Portuguese elsewhere who are making lots of money off Airbnb in Portugal probably ought to be treated the same as foreigners who are doing the same thing. But those who are resident in Portugal, who are providing a quality service, and actually the other thing is there should be a distinction between absentee and on the premises landlords, because a lot of properties, as we know, are split top and bottom into effectively 2 units, and someone who lets out the upstairs floor on an Airbnb basis when family aren't coming to visit should be treated differently to someone who's got a portfolio of 300 Airbnbs, never visits them, pays someone a very low fee to keep them clean and hand the keys over, and rakes off the profit. So there is a huge, it's a very broad market and needs regulation with some degree of finesse.
And that's a really interesting one, isn't it? Because what tends to happen with that is that people with their own single Airbnb would rather not go legit and do it on a cash basis because of what they encounter by engaging with the authorities. And then on the other hand, the huge companies, the property management companies who do Airbnbs, who seem to be riding roughshod and creating some of these social problems, are well resourced to engage properly with the authorities, and so the problem persists. And somebody who just wants to make a little bit of extra income, it's not worth them going into it. And this is of course a problem for would-be migrants and expats coming into Portugal. They're losing confidence in how their future might be funded here by exactly the scenario you described, Doc. Right? Somebody comes in, they buy a split property. Oh, we've lost the Doc there. They buy a split property, and they want a bit of side income to look after themselves. It could in fact be part of their D7, could it not? Their income stream coming in from the side there. And they're worried now that they're hearing from Portugal that it may not be possible for them to do that, which I think is, again, leads us to, I don't know how much of this the Doc will have heard. He seems to be having a connection problem this morning. Let's see if we can get him back onto the screen. But the problem here that I'm alluding to is one of confidence for people moving to the country, and how with the golden visa being scrapped and this idea of having an AL on the side, just as a little bit of income, might be undermining people's personal plans coming to Portugal and shaking confidence a little bit. Doc, you seem to be frozen. I don't know. You look like a member of Craftwork again. On your screen, I think your connection is not superb. Let's have a look at some more of the comments. We've got David Durham here saying hello to you. Hopefully we can get your connection sorted out, Doc. And at Thunderduck from Joao F, in my case, I would gladly give away one of my spare chairs, but I would hate to be forced to do it. So I understand your point. Andy, you're right. My ex-wife used to be a property litigator. Probably somebody quite fearsome to go up against in a divorce as well, maybe there, Pete. Andy, you're right. My ex-wife used to be a property litigator and had clients who often forgot about multi-million-pound properties that had got lost in their portfolios. What a situation to be in. Interesting point as well here from you, Pete. The transfer of wealth to the very richest over the last years in an empire, has been happening since the Assyrians 6,000 years ago, and usually ends in a revolution. There's a cheerful thought. Which part of libertarianism bothers you? The part where you have to make decisions about your own life, or the part where you don't get to make decisions for mine? I think it's a great idea. Coming back to what you're saying, Doc, maybe we've got you connected now. One of the best things about our area is reasonably affordable land that people can care for. We have amazing rural caretakers whose natural heirs have been put off. I'm still not sure, Doc. I don't know if you can hear me now.
Yes, I can. Sorry, I'm on my phone now because my computer appears to have decided to start to back up or something, and that's why.
Oh, that's no good. Okay, so I get the theory of what you're talking about. I from my experience of Portuguese politics, I'm afraid to put the sort of power you're talking about into the hands of people who have not necessarily. A bit like you were saying about charity leaders, if it was a good idea to put this sort of power and these new policies in the hands of politicians, why wouldn't they have done it by now? Why would they have not have proved themselves people worthy of such a responsibility? Perhaps the rules that need to be reconsidered are how inheritance is allowed to be considered in some parts of the world. If agreement can't come, it goes to auction. I think that happens informally, but it can take 20 years here. Hola, cool peeps. Mrs. M is around as well this morning. That idea makes too much sense and doesn't permit the politicians to scam any money out of the deal. Oh, T-Duck this morning, a little bit cynical, like me, I think, about politicians and their motivations, perhaps. What is this? Antonio F. and Shuao F. Please translate for us if that's a contribution to this conversation. In the UK, affordable housing is normally unaffordable. Funny that, thus drives society to unthinkable measures to survive. Yeah, indeed, the middle class are being driven to the right by a few unscrupulous political directives. Would you say that's beginning to happen here as well, Doc?
I think it's the natural movement of the stage of capitalism that we're in, and I don't think necessarily it drives the middle class to the right. Although I understand what you're saying. It's one of the potential consequences if the left fails to capitalize, for want of a better word,
Yes,
on the opportunities presented to it. And mostly that's what happens, because the so-called political left in parliamentary politics are not bold enough in their actions. They lag behind not just the working class, but the progressive middle class, who get disillusioned and indeed allow a move to the right.
I can see that. Okay, I'm so glad to see David Carvalho here as well. Please come and speak to us one morning. I haven't seen you for ages, David. You are a visionary, an amazing entrepreneur and a thinker here in Portugal. So do please come on the show, and thank you for joining us from over on LinkedIn. Let's welcome now this interesting conversation where the words of the left are failing to capitalize are still ringing in my ears. There, Doc. Let's bring onto the screen Bobby O'Reilly. Morning, Bobby. Bobby, meet Doc.
Morning,
meet Bobby. I don't know.
Hi, Bobby.
Conversation so far, Bobby. But what interesting times we're in. Without as a bit of background, how are you responding to the measures that have been introduced and have been suggested by the PM and his colleagues?
Well, I won't say I've responded as yet, except for I have a couple of thoughts on it.
Okay.
There's a lot of stuff, actually, I've just listened to the doc there as well, that I agree with, which is that they should leave the AL alone. I think that it's a disaster if they touch it. I think the one thing that Portugal needs is people that's coming here to invest. One thing I think everyone sort of seems to forget is that it is a lot of the foreign investment over the last 10, 11 years that has actually helped the economy recover. And it's not just about investing in properties for them to make money, but also the tax take that's come out of those that's helped the government itself to allow it to bring in different programs, social programs, etc. in Portugal. And I think they're sort of jumping on them a little bit. And there's a bit of foreign bashing going on to an extent. And I saw even some comments, people saying that, oh, the golden visa is dead, thank God, etc.
Yes, yes.
I genuinely believe those people don't even know what the golden visa has done for them. And there's a very misconception with regards to that they're buying up all these properties all over the country and making it unaffordable for everybody else, etc. And I was wanting to put it into perspective. Over the last 11 years, there's only been just over 9,000 residential properties bought for the golden visa. Now, to put that in context, there's 160,000 units bought every year for residential property. So that's 9,000 over 11 years. But it's brought in 6.8 billion euros into the coffers of the Portuguese government. And I think they're very quick to go, let's get rid of the golden visa because it's putting the prices up, etc. What I think they should have done, and is actually sit down and talk to the people who are involved with, say, the golden visa program as well, but also the housing requirement. The big issue here about housing is no one's actually said, what do we need? And I even hear people talking about rental properties. People should be looking to buy their own homes and have their own homes if they want as well. So if somebody is able to afford whatever it is that they're paying for rent, and if they choose to, they should be able to buy a house at the same rent that they're paying. Because typically when someone's renting a property, they're paying the mortgage for somebody else. So for me, there's a big drop off and a big lack of understanding and help and there from a governmental and informational point of view for people to help them to buy their own houses. And I think that's where the how do you say, the conversation needs to start.
Very good. And that's a great point. Wouldn't that be a great world to live in, where instead of lining someone else's pockets, you could be paying your own mortgage and buying a property? Buy to let of that kind. I know this goes on as private agreements, doesn't it, sometimes, Bobby? But there's no recognizable scheme for doing that, is there?
No, and actually, the one thing I think there's a lack of imagination in Portugal itself with regards to actually buying properties. And if you look at other countries that have come out of, say, crisis and housing crisis and so on, they should look at those and what they implemented and what worked. And for example, in Ireland, I know we had what they call the National Asset Management Agency, NAMA, which basically stepped in when the banks failed and took the assets off of developers and so on. And I won't say it was very successful. It sort of, it got us through a situation, but what you needed to understand was to stop the market falling. You had to stop the property market falling, because you actually said something earlier on, and it was basically confidence. Confidence is so important in any given market. And right now, with what the government is saying, it's knocking the confidence out of investing into Portugal. And what Portugal needs right now is money to come in to develop houses for requirement. And I think that's really, again, where we have to start.
Excellent. Okay, so they did do that in Ireland. Then they kind of went in where the property market had failed.
Yeah, basically what they done was they had brought out this NAMA thing, and basically they introduced certain things that would help the locals be able to buy property. So, for example, they gave a tax incentive or a tax credit to people that were buying, first-time buyers, etc. Also, you were able to achieve up to 95% mortgages. There was no purchase tax for first-time buyers, etc. So, because when you're buying a house here, you have to come up with 10% or 15% of the value of the property yourself. You have to save that. At the same time, rent the property, or you have to borrow it off parents, etc. And then you go, okay, I've got my 10% or I've got my 15%. But then hold on a second, I've got another 35,000 to come up to pay the government to buy that house as well. That in itself stops a lot of people buying a house, because coming up with the 10 or 15%, people can manage. But coming up with an extra taxes and so on, if they bought the house with no furniture, you know. So there has to be incentives there to help people to buy, but also buy what they need, not what is just affordable. And I think that there's a big sort of disconnect between what's required and what's available. And that comes out of the lack of planning, and it comes out of the slowness of decision making from the government point of view. Like typically you're talking about 2 years from somebody buying a piece of property to getting their planning. And then about 6 months later to get a decision to say, yeah, you can actually go and live in it. There's the license, you know. So if you're a developer and you buy a piece of land, you have a lot of numbers of things that you have to look at. Number one, the price of the land today, plus the taxes you have to pay to the government when they give you the planning. Then the cost of what it's going to cost you to construct. Now, if you're saying I want to build it today, it's 1,200 euros a square meter plus VAT, which basically is a cost as well. But if I don't know if I can build that property for 2 or 3 years, I don't know what the cost is. I also don't know what the market is. I don't know what I'm going to be able to sell that property for in 2 or 3 years either. So it's a very risky business when you're a developer in Portugal, because you don't know when you're going to be able to build, you don't know what your cost is going to be, and you don't even know if you can sell it. So this in itself disincentivizes investors investing into property to create a housing supply. And that it's not just, I suppose, there's a fear of taking on too much here. Like one thing I have to do with investors is to explain to them that where the market is going, this is a requirement, and this is where the market should be, and this is our price points. And then you also have to explain this is our cost. We have what they call a feasibility study. Right now, we're building with what they call cost plus. And cost plus basically means whatever it costs, they add on their profit to the end of it. But you don't really know what your cost is going to be. Because if steel goes up, your construction cost goes up. Now, if I create a contract for somebody to buy a house, and I say to them, I'm selling you this house, but you don't know what you're going to pay for it until it's ready. But that's what we have to do. You
Yes.
understand?
Yeah.
And if you look at the pricing of houses today, and what creates that price value is number one is the supply and demand. There's a lot more people wanting to move to Portugal than ever before. I think it's gone up like something like 70% in the last 5 years. I think we have like 700,000 non-Portuguese now resident in Portugal. I think 5 years ago about 350,000. But the thing is that there's a lot of reasons people want to come and live in Portugal. It's a fantastic place to live. But the population itself hasn't had any big major spurt. So the demand on housing is constant, but the flow of actual housing stock is not. And like what you were saying earlier on, for every one sold, there's 9 required.
There it is.
It's So like the thing is that there's a huge, but really there is a solution, and everyone's looking at the problem. And I think what they're trying to do is they're trying to stick their fingers in a hole in the dam for political reasons, because they're looking for political points and say, oh, we're going to take all this properties off of these rich people. Rich people, they're not rich people. They're people that basically made hopefully sound investments and deserve a return, of which they're going to pay their tax on, which goes back into the actual paying for the social services that the government wants to implement and the policies they want to implement. Because now they're going to have to do without this 6.8 billion from the golden visa. And also, if I'm an investor outside and I'm looking to invest into Portugal, right now I'm quite scared. Yeah. I don't know if I want to buy a property here. To live here, yes, absolutely. But they're now frightening people with regards to where the government's going with their policy and how foreigners are going to be seen coming into Portugal by the Portuguese.
Yeah, and if they watch the news, they will see soon, won't they, on CNN, that the property owners in Portugal who are worried about the AL licenses are protesting as well. And I think there'll be a number of different protests around the country, and the controversy will rage. I mean, I guess this is the political process as well, Doc. How could this have been managed any better from your point of view, as somebody with a keen eye on politics? It's not been a PR success, has it? Doing a PowerPoint presentation and then the president sort of backing off a bit, saying, "Well, it's like a melon. You don't know what it's going to be like until we've sliced it open." These are the people in charge. Could it have been handled a bit better? Do you think?
Yeah, of course, it could have been handled better, and the Portuguese government, like I think probably every other government that I can think of, is particularly incompetent at managing their policy development processes. You show me a government in the Western world that is managing policy development well. But one of the reasons for that is that it's put in the hands of so-called experts and think tanks, and there's not enough engagement with the people at the cutting edge, whether in this case that be developers like Bobby, or tenants organizations, or municipalities who know what their economic plans need to be. But like Bobby said, there's no planning, and actually, as a socialist, I'm a great fan of planning. You can't expect to be able to come up with a housing policy without knowing how many empty properties you've got, what your requirement is, where your economic activities are going to grow and shrink. It's just been ridiculous. But the whole of politics, this is a wider point. The whole of politics needs to be devolved and decentralized, and much more engagement with non-politicians in developing policy.
Sounds like a plan. This is the sort of thing you were talking about, Bobby. And this is the sort of soundbitey stuff that you might expect from social media. On the really dark side, with the confiscation or commandeering of properties, you will own nothing and be happy, says Sophie, on that. Incredible. Your comments on that YouTube video, Golden Visa Killed, are going around the world. People are very interested to know. It's like a political symbol, isn't it, the Golden Visa, as a measure of confidence in the country. And on that point, Sue Bowman says, "Yay, thank you, Portugal Golden Visa program is dead." Like that would be like a major contribution to our general progress as a society. I understand the emotion behind that, but as you said, I think it's not especially helpful to see it as a political football in this way. And it's a good change for Portugal. A somewhat tempered comment from kind everyone. Golden visa worked, but not sustainable. And I think people generally agree about that. These things need to be evolved, don't they, rather than summarily executed one day as a political act.
Well, again, I think if you sat down and you planned it right, they got it right at the start, because they needed to open up the program. It was come and invest 500,000 euros in Portugal. We need it, and for that, we're going to give you a temporary residency. That was the program. Very simple. If you look at the NHR program, the non-habitual tax residency program, that has, I think, something like 70,000 or more people have taken it up, rather than 9,000, and it hasn't even come into the fray. And the NHR program basically, it's clever, but what it done was it basically gave people, I won't say exactly tax-free, but come and live in Portugal from another European country, and you don't have to pay tax for 10 years. Now, that got a lot of people's backs up with regards to foreigners coming in here and they don't have to pay a tax. But the thing is, they are paying tax because they're spending a lot more money if they live here. And then you've got the stealth taxes that come off of that. In other words, everything here is 23% tax, regardless of how you look at it. So anything that they've spent here, they've spent 23% tax on it. But the thing is that the golden visa, I think, was misrepresented in the media with regards to a sort of like some kind of evil thing where people were coming in and pricing out the locals. It's just not true. You're talking less than 1,000 properties a year. It's minuscule in the context. Now, what also gets my back up as well is that, and I've sold these properties to people that if you bought this property here, it's this price because this is the percentage of return you're going to get, etc. And these are normal people. These are normal people who basically are in a situation in another country where they have an opportunity to help them have a better life by either giving their kids an opportunity to have a better education or to move in the event of where they're living blows up around them, and which has happened, you know. So these people have come, they've bought a property and got an AL license on it, and let's say they paid 500,000 euros and hoping to get a 5 or 6% return. Pay your tax on that, you've got 3%. It's not a lot of money. You're probably talking 15,000 euros a year for a 500,000 euros investment after they pay all their bits and pieces. So it's not going to make anybody rich. But now, if that guy sells that property, whoever buys it can't renew an AL license on it, which now means that the property value has decreased substantially. So this guy now is going to lose a lot of money. And the locals will say, well, great, now it's making it more affordable. But it's not. Now the next guy won't come and invest in Portugal. So it's a bit of a wagon wheel in the sense that it's going to come back and bite you. And you're going to be back to where you started, and they're going to become a cap in hand again in the future, going, oh God, where do we get these investors from? You know? So really, they need to be very careful what they're doing here. Because as I said earlier, confidence is everything. Yeah. If you take the confidence out of this market, not only will property start to plummet, but people start to lose their jobs because of the problem. If you look at what happens in any recession, property values go down, first of all, because confidence gone out of the value. People go, it's not worth that. Let's wait till the price falls. Price falls. And then there's no bottom. There's no line drawn in the sand. Property prices will fall. What's going to happen next? People are going to start losing their jobs because there's no one selling properties, there's no one building properties. The guys who are working in that industry were going into the clothes shop, they were buying clothes, they were buying coffees, they were going out for dinners. Now they can't do that anymore. So those people are going to lose their jobs. All of a sudden, your unemployment rate's going to shoot up, and you're going to have loads of people back on the dole on the socials, and they don't have the money to pay them because now they have no more investments coming in to put that money into the coffer. So they have to be very careful and not kill the confidence of the foreign investor coming into this country because it's heavily reliant on it, whether it knows it or not.
That makes complete sense. So we've got some great views coming in. Capricorn 12, Chris, a lot of Airbnb owners pay a lot of revenue, if not all of it, back to the Portuguese economy. Shopping, mortgages, fuel, cleaners, house management. He's talking from experience. Don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. I think it echoes what you're saying there, Bobby. I want to drive the Câmara Municipal in Idananova or drive to the Camarón Municipal in Antananova and see what information I can get about the property I made an offer for. Very likely a big test of my Portuguese. Good luck with that, you property developer in central Portugal there. A point from Digo, housing, health, education should be a right for everyone without extortionate costs. I think we can all agree on that. It's the methods, isn't it, that we're discussing, what's going to make most sense and what could practically and likely happen. Reduce the point of sale tax on property will reduce cost immediately. Increase annual tax to encourage people to use valuable property, else sell it. Thank you, David, for that comment. David Cavalhão, Portugal has around 1.9 million occupied houses. So it's inflated from 750,000 to 1.9 million unoccupied houses. Or maybe that's people not using them for themselves. There is some confusion about the numbers, but they are big numbers. Let's not get away from that fact that there is a lot of inventory not available. It's just that putting them on the market for rent is a huge risk given the current legal landscape for landlords. That's a fair point, isn't it? Right now, material costs are going through the roof. I have friends that purchased land but are holding off building due to crazy costs of materials and construction. Again, a confidence thing. It's not just foreign property developers, says Randy, that are nervous to invest here. I know Portuguese developers that are now looking outside Portugal. Wow. Yeah. Bobby Doc, do you remember that government in another country that backed Brexit taking a sledgehammer to crack a chia seed? Is there a resonance here then with a range of political moves that are a little bit inappropriate and could cause more trouble than this setting out to solve? Bobby?
Sorry, say again?
Do you think it is a sledgehammer to crack a chia seed, as Chris is saying here, and it has a Brexit resonance?
Look, the way I look at this is pure political point scoring. That's all this is. It's going on a narrative that they're trying to create a shock effect. I think they're taking a leaf out of Michael O'Leary's book. Let's say it's some shocking things and let's get all the media headlines, etc., and let's see what happens later on. And then they'll actually look at what's happening within the political debate and then decide what's going to happen. But really what they need to do is they need to get serious here. And they need to get serious. They need to sit down and first of all, seriously, look at what's in the municipalities for planning as it stands and see is it fit for purpose. There was a lot, and actually there's a big job in the planning office to make sure what's being built is fit for purpose and it doesn't destroy an area like what's happened, say, in the 70s and so on. There's a lot of buildings that were built that shouldn't have been built in the style that were built and so on. And I totally agree with that. But I think we have to start looking forward rather than backwards. And you have to look at what's the requirement today of a house and what kind of houses people want to live in. And, because if you're building lots and lots of small little apartments and that's what people can afford, that's all that's available, that's all the choice they have. But if you're building homes and houses and as again, greenhouses and trying to future-proof the house as much as possible and make it affordable. And make it affordable in the sense that the government actually can incentivize buyers to buy them by either giving a tax credit. Not even a tax credit basically means you only don't pay part of your tax for the next 10 years. It's not actually looking to put out any money. They're not saying they don't actually have to spend any money. It's just an intake. Now, if you can create a program like this where you incentivize buyers to buy a certain type of house, the builders will build for that demand. And let's say they say the house value has to be this price. Builder can actually go back and go, okay, well, if that's the value I have to work with, this is what I have to do. This is the size of house I have to build, or this is the area I have to build. I believe there has to be room for an understanding and a negotiation with the government requirement, with what is required. And then guidelines. Because right now, if you go into a camera and you say, okay, I'm looking at this piece of land, what do you envisage I can do on it? And a lot of the time they'll say, well, submit a plan and we'll tell you if we like it or not.
Yeah.
And that's it. And normally the answer was, we don't like it. But they won't tell you what they don't like about it. It's a bit like you have to guess. And hopefully you guess right, and it takes a long time to even get to that point. By getting the architects in and they believe, well, I'll talk to the local architect, and there's a lot involved in it. So I think there has to be guidelines set out with regards to this is what we want built in these areas. This is the type we want. This is the type of structure and infrastructure we want put around it. So, for example, when you come in with a big plan, okay, is the infrastructure there for it? That's one part of it. Have you got the schools? Have you got the roads? Have you got the services around it, and so on and so forth? Or look at where there's land at the moment where you do have those services around it, and then give incentives to somebody, to developers, to develop here. Because you have an infrastructure already, we have a housing need, please come in and build here, and even do it as a PPP, a public-private partnership, if they want. But the thing is that they need to get serious about the supply and what type of supply they need.
Very interesting. So looking in the wrong place and maybe just grabbing headlines. Would you agree with that analysis, Doc?
Yeah, I mean, the cynic in me would say this is expectation management. Put out a headline that says we're going to do all these quasi-socialist, balmy things, and then when they come out with their actual plans, which previously people might have protested against, they would say, "Oh, thank God for that. That's not as bad as we thought." So that might be a cynical view, but it wouldn't be the first time that politicians have engaged in that kind of expectation management. But maybe I'm crediting them with too much sense and capability to do that. And maybe this is just a total cock up. I don't know.
So of the two propositions here, it's either incompetence or cynicism. Now we need to get beyond that, don't we? And the funny thing is, between us here, we have the most incredible package of ideas and suggestions. It's as though we should have our own kind of immigrant foreigner expat association that represents these ideas to the government. If you're watching, we're here. Very happy to share that. Joao F, Bobby, up for that? You were nodding vigorously there.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think there needs to be some kind of, and I'm sure there is probably somewhere, there's somebody that represents expat community, because it's a growing community.
Yes.
As over 700,000 expats living in Portugal, and that's a voice, and there's, how would you say, there's a lot of issues, let's say, that we could help with, because we bring as foreigners, and I think a lot of people that I've known that moved to Portugal have sort of have great insights because of their own experiences from the countries that they come from. And what's a great idea, that kind of way. And instead of looking inward, just should look outward sometimes, just to see what else or what other kind of options are out there on different things and different ideas.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's at least a lunch the three of us can have to discuss that further. It is absolutely false that the housing problem in Portugal will be solved only by putting empty private properties to rent. Yeah, this is the soundbite grabbing stuff that you're talking about here, isn't it? This represents an absolutely insufficient amount of units for the needs. Since the Constitution says housing is a fundamental right, the government should lower the several layers of tax that result in about 50% more end price of the houses. And only new construction in great numbers focused on affordable prices can solve this problem, as you were saying there, Bobby. What the government is trying to do is to guarantee their support from the voters. No, it is cynicism, Doc, from the support from the voters to the left of them, given the drop in government approval in the polls. I can't believe it. And also because Bloco de Esquerda is getting its leadership renewed, which is, of course, disadvantageous for the Socialist Party. Political shenanigans over the goodness of the people and the benefit of the people. An Englishman, an Irishman, and a Chinaman walked into a podcast. Very funny, Mrs. M. And Joao. The other side of the problem is a huge bureaucratic procedures that make projects transit from drawer to drawer. That is a sad portrayal of the conditions you described earlier, Bobby, right? The transit from drawer to drawer inside the Câmaras Municipais and the huge corruption on a local level. I'm sorry to end on such a dismal note, but we have got a lot of great ideas here, and I think a representation would be fantastic from the expat community to quell the confidence problem that we've talked about this morning, and to bring some bright new ideas from that growing population. 700,000, I think, that's doubled in the last 10 years. You said there, Bobby?
5 years. Last 5 years.
5 years. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I guess we probably represent close on 10% of the economically active population in the country, because I suspect that a greater percentage of the expats are economically active than the general population are. So you cannot turn your back on the views and the interests of that sector of the population.
Indeed. Excellent stuff, guys, from 13111Y and Deagle. this is the other thing to bear in mind, of course. We have one of the oldest populations in Europe, don't we, in Portugal? So what's going to happen with those folks and the housing situation for them? We all get old. We need proper housing for different ages. A community needs children, family, friendly houses, a few apartments, ones leaving the family house, and bungalows and pensions. Very interesting point that you made earlier on, Bobby. You know, people buy what's available and what they can afford. It's not necessarily right for human beings, is it? It's led by the economics there. Smash that socialist button. the punchline to the Englishman, Irishman, and Chinaman walking to a pub. The pub was closed, so they asked the government to reopen it. No one wants trendy apartment blocks that in 20 years time become very tired. Look at what the problem of Britain in the 60s. Yeah, we don't seem to have learned from that, do we? And I have a dislike of lots of square houses being developed like lumps of boxes joined together. Should be more legislation on design of a house. To keep the Portuguese aesthetic, and it is a good aesthetic that we love, we admired when we arrived here.
There's a funny point there, to be honest with you. Like, and any real estate agent will tell you, if you put that box up against a traditional style, it'll get double the price. So basically, the demand is in the boxes. I actually prefer traditional houses. Like when I came to Portugal, I didn't want a big square box either, but the demand was that, and the perception is it's more modern, it's more whatever it is, and you would sell it 10 times quicker than you would sell a traditional house. If an agent goes into your house and says it's traditional, well, it's not really a market or whatever it is, and that you notice something like 80% of the stock that's available, it's a resort, it's old traditional style houses, which the demand is moving away from, and it's built from the 80s or before the 80s. So it's the demand for new homes from the younger population and from the expat population in general is not the traditional build.
That's so interesting, and we do need to do a bit of re-education on that, possibly on the beauty of the Portuguese ethic vernacular there, rather than the Instagram style houses that lend themselves best to social media. Go on, Doc.
Some of it, I think, is about comfort. I mean, I'm a great fan of traditional style, and we're looking to buy a reasonably traditional styled property. It's a traditional style with a modern extension, but it's quite nicely done. But a lot of traditionally built houses are cold, damp. The room areas aren't bad, but the cold and damp, and the newer square boxes are not cold and damp. So we need to sort out a renovation program to standard. We need to encourage people in terms of what they see as cool and modern. And the other thing is, we haven't talked about it, I don't want to go into it in great detail, but one of the traditional forms of housing in Northern Europe is the one family house, the Einfamilienhaus, where there are three stories, and generations rotate through those stories.
How lovely.
So it's always the older generation on the ground floor because they don't have to worry about the steps, and then you've got the next generation and the other generation, and they rotate through those stories. That keeps families together. But it depends on economic activity. And if you can't get economic planning together and know what you're doing with your economy, then you're going to end up with lots of people chasing jobs, living in cheap, substandard housing because that's all they can afford. And we need to change the whole thing. It's not just about housing, but housing is a big part of it.
Well said, Doc. Thank you both, gentlemen, for being here. I think we nailed it. Today's episode was called Solving the Portugal Property Problem, and I think we did a very good job. Well done, Bobby.
That's a payout Wednesday, launching Wednesday.
Launching Wednesday, a vision of the future. Tell us a bit more about that then, Bobby, because you are leaning in, aren't you, to the idea of community, some of the ideas that Doc's talking about there, a sense of community, a high spec to suit the coming times, energy costs as well. Tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, and to make it short and sweet, basically it's a very modern take on the house for health, security, also with regards to the cost of living in Portugal. It's to create the house and everything around it that it's completely free because you have to obviously buy the house at the start, but you've got no electric costs, you've got no gas costs, you've got no petrol or diesel costs, etc. You have a choice if you want to use the public transport or not, or have an electric car, but also you have a big social side to this project, which is to incorporate the existing residents and community that's already there, and basically launches this week. And it's 250 square meters with a private pool, completely self-sufficient, and hope to. And actually, there's a thing: we're selling it to residents. We're selling it to people who are here. I could sell this to investors overnight, to be honest with you, because like it would rent no problem. But we've chosen not to. We've chosen to sell it to people who live in Portugal, and that's exactly how we're doing it.
Yeah.
So that's it.
Excellent. Well, we'll be broadcasting live from there as well on March the 4th. Maybe Doc, you should come over and have a look at that. We've got dad jokes to finish with as a palate cleanser, but there's a serious question as well, and a serious point made by João. Sorry to keep you, gents, but this interesting stuff here. Do you think that there will be a change so houses will be on a single MLS system, making it easier to locate sale houses? Bobby, MLS anytime soon? The single system back office for estate agents and real estate agents?
I really don't know, to be honest with you. Like, I think right now, how would you say? I think people are just going to keep looking around and they're going to see what suits them first. I think choice is after becoming very few. So people, the different types of property that are out there after start reducing a lot. So I think they're just going to keep looking to see what they can find, what suits them best.
Yeah. I think it will stay the same for a while yet. No MLS on its way, I don't think, for Portugal, not for the immediate future. Allow me to be poisonous and corrosive. Go on, João. Apparently, no government has been interested in solving problems for the elderly. Once they have died, the social security system problem will be automatically solved. Ooh, ouch. We definitely need dad jokes now after that. So dad joke warning. What do you call a bulletproof Irishman? Rick O'Shea. That's good. That's good. We like that. And some others here from earlier on. Thank you, T-Duck, for these. Super. Thank you for everybody for your comments. Great to see you here this morning. If a plant is sad, do the other plants photosympathize with it? Certainly hope so. Why did the gardener fall in a hole? Because he couldn't see that well. Oh, my. Can you manage one more, gents? You'll be telling your kids later. If you can't, you can't plant flowers if you haven't botany. Ouch, that hurts, doesn't it? Well, have a great day, both of you. Sorry about the jokes. And we will see you again soon. Thanks for being here. Bobby O'Reilly from Dynasty Homes. Good luck with the launch this week of Herdad de Mayo. And Doc, good luck in your new teaching career, Professore. All right. All we will see you tomorrow morning with Heather Binder from Boots on the Ground and MJ, Maria João Silva, tomorrow morning. Look forward to your company then. Have a great day, everybody. Ciao for now.
In Portugal, there's a YouTube show full of fun facts you need to know. Carl rings the bell and the members show to the GMP morning show. Featured guests will come and they will blow your mind. The audience will do so in kind. The little vanity mixed with some insanity on the morning show with GMP.
Good morning, Portugal, and I'd like to welcome you to another fantastic day